everyone. Welcome to our Training for Mount Rainier webinar. This is the third in our Ask a Guide webinar series. We're getting a little bit better at the technical side of it, but ask you to still bear with us if there's any issues. We're going to wait just a few minutes before we get started. Probably get started at like 6:33, just so some more people can show up. But feel free to introduce yourself in the chat there. Maybe let us know where you're from, or if you're planning on climbing with RMI this year, if you have before, or if you have no plans to, but just want to learn how to train, that's fine too. Yeah, this is Dom up here. We'll do some real introductions here when we get started, but we've got Dom who will be leading it, and then Hannah, our head of content and social media, is also around, and she and I will be, yeah, she's lurking. She and I will be kind of asking questions as they come in, but I'll take you guys through that whole process here in a second. Cool. A lot of people sounding off. That's great. Yeah. It's kind of weird being able to see you guys, so it makes us feel like we're actually talking to a room full of people and the chat is active, which is nice.
When I go on stage by myself, all of the jokes that I make are just for myself because I'm the only one there.
Exactly. Cool.
A ton of eclectic places. This is neat.
Yeah, it's awesome. All over. Sweet. Well, I'll kind of just start giving the preamble. So the way we've done these in the past is I'll introduce Dom and kind of let you guys know how it goes, and then I will disappear for a while Dom gives the presentation, and then I'll come back in for Q&A. We ask you guys to put questions in the chat, and then Hannah and I will tag them, and we'll go through all of them at the end. Dom might see one or two that he answers during the flow of the presentation if it fits in, but for the most part, we're going to save the whole Q&A for the end. We ask you guys, just because there's a lot of people here and it's a pretty expansive topic, to try and keep questions kind of on topic with training, mainly for Mount Rainier. If you've got a couple questions about general expedition training, that's all right too, but want to keep it fairly focused today. And then if you can, try and limit yourself to just one or two. I know there's a lot of questions out there, but the good news is that the RMI office is always available to answer those questions that you might have via phone, email, whatever it is, Instagram DMs. We can help you out, and we're always happy to chat about any of this stuff. So yeah, I'll let Dom kind of introduce himself and get started, and you'll see us flagging questions throughout the whole thing. And yeah, or actually, Dom, what are you thinking for timing, I guess, before we get started? We hadn't talked about
timing. I think the whole thing should probably take about an hour. We're going to go through the slideshow, and I'm going to go not like super surface level, but I want to hit all of the points that we're trying to hit for Mount Rainier. And then we'll open up to the group. I'm sure you all have very specific questions about your specific time of year or anything that might apply to you specifically. And we want to give credence to that and answer all of your questions that you have. And so if we don't hit it, like Christian said, throw it in the chat and we're going to try to answer them, but we can't answer them all. Right. And so if you do call the office, you'll probably be talking to me anyway. So.
I did just see one question I can answer really quick. Are the previous Ask a Guide sessions available for replay? Yep, they are all up on our YouTube. They're under our webinar playlist. You can find them there. And then if you've been to any of the previous sessions or maybe even signed up for them but didn't get to go, we do send out automatic emails with the recording right after the session too. Nice. Thank you, Hannah, for putting our YouTube in the chat. All right, cool. So yeah, my name is Christian Whitaker. I am the head of marketing for RMI, and I will hand it over to Dom.
All right, let's start this thing, huh? Before I go ahead and introduce myself, I'm going to go ahead a slide because I'm on the next slide. My big mug right there. My name's Dominic, right? I'm originally from New Jersey. I see Mike from New Jersey. I think I saw Esther from New Jersey as well. Heck yeah. I'm originally from New Jersey, East Coast kid, but now I live in Washington. I live in North Bend. If you ever seen Twin Peaks, that's where Twin Peaks is from or filmed. And so loving North Bend, that's where Psy is. That's where Mailbox Peak is. And if you're living in Seattle or living close by, that's probably where you're going to train. I've been working for RMI for about a decade now. And yeah, my whole resume is on the website. I'm not going to walk through all the mountains that I've done, but yeah, we get a lot of questions about how to train for Mount Rainier, how to train for mountains in general, what to do specifically, what metrics there are in order to make sure that you're, putting your time and resources in the right spots. And we want to answer those questions, and hopefully we do during the slideshow. And if not, hopefully we answer it in the Q&A. But again, my name is Dominic. I live in North Bend with my 2 dogs and my wife, Emily. And yeah, if you see me in North Bend or down at base camp, make sure you come and say hi. I'll see you on Mount Si. So yeah, Rainier is a real deal mountain, right? It's not the tallest in the United States. That goes to Mount Whitney, but it's a little bit harder than Mount Whitney, if I'm being completely honest, right? I think it's the hardest in the lower 48 that you can climb without actually climbing vertically. And so, yeah, it deserves some respect. And I think a lot of people are underestimated when they come to climb Rainier. They think it's just like any other 14er when you go to Colorado or some in California. And it's just not quite the case. It's a little bit harder. It's a little bit colder. It's a little bit longer, right? And so it deserves a little bit more of your time in order to properly prepare for the mountain itself, mainly because you're not starting at 10,000 feet like you are for Mount Elbert in Colorado. You're instead starting at 5,000 feet at Paradise, right? And so with that extra elevation, it begs the preparation of a little bit more of your time, okay? When we're going on summit day, right, everybody's asking what the climb itself usually looks like. And in order to like walk through what kind of training we should do, we should first walk through what the climb even looks like itself, right? And so you are starting at Paradise, the parking lot of Mount Rainier. And that first day of your climb, and I'm speaking to the 4-day climb for RMI itself, that first day of the climb, or third day, really, you're going from Paradise to Camp Muir. Paradise sits at 5,420. Camp Muir sits at 10,080. Okay, that's a big difference if you're doing some math, right? 4,600 feet. Okay, that's a ton of elevation. Yeah, holy cow, Sue. And you're not wearing a day pack, right? You need to carry the layers that you need, the equipment that you need, the sleeping bag. We provide a lot, like the ropes and just the rescue gear and the mountain gear, like pickets and shovels and stuff up at Camp Muir, and the guides carry that ourselves. But that doesn't mean that your loads are necessarily light, right? You should expect somewhere in the realm of 25, 35 pounds, right? I would encourage you not to weigh your pack though when you're climbing, because it's all you'll be thinking about. Right. And so you have a heavy pack on the approach. You're climbing 4,600 feet and you're going up to an altitude that maybe you haven't been to before, right? 10,000 feet. And so we need to prepare for that, right? When you get up to Camp Muir, you really don't sleep, you more rest. And within a few hours, you're going to be getting up, alpine starting, and going for the summit, right? Again, Camp Muir sits at 10,080. The summit sits at 14,410 feet. And yeah, that's another big difference, right? But it's going to feel even longer, honestly, right? Even higher, just because of the altitude involved with the climb. Okay. What is an alpine start? I'll just answer that right now. Alpine starts are just like a industry term for starting in the middle of the night, right? Alpine starts start at 2 a.m., 1 a.m., 12 a.m., anything like that, right? And so it's starting before the sun rises, okay? Thanks for the question. And so that summit push is going to feel long. There's a lot of mental taxation, physical taxation. And yeah, that's why you're here. That's why you want to know how to train, because it might be the hardest thing that you've ever done. And that should excite you, right? So how do we do it? Okay. These are the few things that I picked out that are pretty high level: the aerobic endurance, the muscular endurance, and the fatigue resistance. And if you can check those boxes, you're sitting in a pretty good spot for summiting Mount Rainier. And I just want to talk about what each of them are, right? Aerobic endurance, you've heard of it before. It's how long you can go on a run. It's how long you can move your body at a certain pace. It's just your ability to have an elevated heart rate for an extended period of time, right? It says move steadily for a long time. Yeah, you're not redlining yourself. You're not breathing so hard that you can't even think, but you're moving at an accelerated pace for a decent amount of time. Muscular endurance is just your muscles' ability to weather the fatigue of climbing a mountain. You can think about just taking a coffee cup and trying to curl that as much as you can, or a dumbbell bar, right? As much as you can. It's a low level amount of muscular strength that you have to perform over a long swath of time. And so that muscular endurance is a little bit different than cardiovascular endurance. It just refers to your muscles' ability to weather that fatigue. And fatigue resistance, that seems like a really big, wide topic, but it's really about your ability to recover from efforts, right? As we're climbing Mount Rainier, we try to target about an hour on and 10 to 15 minutes of rest and recovery, sitting on our packs and eating and drinking. And so your ability to recover in that 10 to 15 minutes is an important quality that you should be training as well. All right. So if we can check all those boxes, we're really sitting quite well for an attempt on the summit for Mount Rainier. All right. We're not trying to win workouts, right? There's no specific key workout that you have to do in order to climb Mount Rainier. Your whole training program isn't going to come down to one singular workout that makes or breaks you, right? It's consistency over a long stretch of time, and consistency in effort, right? You can miss a few days here and there, but you can't just cram for the test and try to compress all of your training within a month. That should have happened in 4 months, 6 months, however long you decide to be training for. The longer the runway that you can give yourself for training for Mount Rainier, the better off you're going to be, right? The more base you can build, the more targeted you can be. And you give yourself more wiggle room to weather a sickness or take care of a little injury or something like that. And so the longer the runway that you give yourself, the better shot you're gonna have. And it's all about gradual progression, right? Starting from a foundation and building yourself up to the fittest you've ever been, okay? How do we structure that, okay? And so I'm going to shift topics from a pretty summarized version of what training looks like into how to structure a training plan for yourself, okay? And so my climb in this chart, I know it can be a little wonky and confusing to look at it, but it's separated by months, weeks at the top, and the event name, my climb of Mount Rainier on July 1st, okay? And so everything from the first week in January to the 8th week, which is the 3rd week in February, is just low-level training. I've been going on runs. I've been working out in the gym. I've been biking, right? It's just my regular fitness routine. And then I sign up for a Mount Rainier program the 1st week of March, okay? And I start my training plan, right? Those first 2 weeks, I'm kind of just calibrating myself. I'm adjusting from maybe a marathon training to a mountain climbing training, okay? And so maybe it looks like more hikes, more backpacks, all of those things as I start to calibrate my body in order to get more specific with the event that I'm going to be doing, right? Biking a bunch, while it really helps my cardio, won't necessarily help me for a marathon run, right? I wouldn't swim to train for an Ironman or something like that. I guess you would for a little bit, but a marathon, right? And so you want to get a little more specific, and that's where the first 2 weeks come in, just a little bit of calibration. And you'll notice on the right or the left bottom portion of all of that, you have recovery, endurance, steady state, tempo, and intervals. Okay. Uh-oh. What happened to the... There it is. I need it for reference. All right. So recovery is a super, super important portion of all of this. You can't just run yourself into the group. Can you see the graph now, Ron? Just give me a thumbs up or something. I assume you can. Great. Yeah, so recovery is always such an important part of all of this, right? You can't just train yourself into the dirt. Recovery, or those days off, or those weeks that are a little bit lower in intensity, give our bodies the ability to adapt to the training stimulus that we had done prior. And so recovery days are training days. You can quote that to everybody that you're around, that sitting on a couch and lifting your feet up and maybe doing a little bit of stretching and yoga, that is so important to adapting your body to the training stimulus that are below it, right? And so endurance is just what it sounds like. An endurance run, an endurance bike is going to be that low level zone 2, if you've heard of it, your forever pace, right? It's what you're going to be going, or what you could go for 10 hours, 15 hours. You could go at that pace forever, seemingly, though I don't know why you would want to. Steady state is a little bit above that. It's a step above, right? It's an accelerated pace. It's hurting your muscles as well as your cardiovascular system. That's probably the most specific type of training stimulus to climbing Mount Rainier, because it's just a step above. It's not quite at this thing called lactate threshold, but it's a little bit above a zone 2, your forever pace. And that's what we want to target when we're trying to climb Mount Rainier. And that's where the other things come into play, the tempo runs, the interval runs. Okay. And so tempo runs or tempo hikes are short bursts of higher intensity, really close to that lactate threshold, which is where your body starts to switch and starts producing lactic acid, right? Which is what the burning feeling in your muscles are. And so that really is like a 3x12 workout that looks like, what's my definition of short? Yeah, good question. It looks like a 3x12 minute workout where 12 minutes is a little bit of high intensity and then maybe like a 4-minute long rest. And you do that for 3 times. And then intervals is even shorter than all of that. It is like a 4x3 minute interval. Okay. And so you're going really hard intensely for 3 minutes and then taking like a 3-minute break. And that recovery time varies based on your training plan. But what do all these do? Intervals are your training for VO2 max. Think of it as your container. You're training your heart to pump more blood, as much blood as you can, and its efficiency in doing that, right? You want to increase the capacity of the container. You're not making your heart bigger, but it's a good analogy for this. Your tempo runs are increasing your plasma density and the number of mitochondria in your cells to get pretty granular. And if you're a millennial, you've heard mitochondria are the powerhouse of your cells. That's so true. You want to increase the amount and the density in your cells, and that's just going to make you fatigue less. It's going to make you be less susceptible to heat. That's going to be a big help for us. And then that steady state is more on a muscular level and very specific to mountain climbing. And so when we're structuring these training plans, I want to do the least specific thing first and then the most specific thing last, right? A lot of people will liken it to building a house, but it's not quite the case, right? You're building different portions of a house at a certain time. It's not necessarily that linear. And so when we're thinking about specificity, intervals, that short burst of incredibly high intensity is, in my mind, the least specific to Mount Rainier, where as you creep up that list to steady state, right, that longer 40-minute push of a little bit higher intensity than your forever endurance pace, that's specific to Mount Rainier. And so if I can think of the least specific and the most specific, I can just put tempo right in the middle. I'm going to move on. Right. And so we talked about all of this, what your strength and capacity are. I think the only thing that we didn't talk about on this slide is a peak and a taper, right? Obviously, it's like an increasing amount of volume that you're training. Okay. You're slowly ramping up and letting your body adjust and adjust and adjust. And finally, when the event is close enough, you want to give yourself more time to recover, more time to adapt, and more rest for your muscles to really get in a state that you're ready to perform your best. And so that peak and taper is just a little bit of a peak that's maybe 2 weeks or a week out from your actual event that allows you to recover for that said event. Aerobic base. Yeah, we got to build that foundation first. That's that first part of the training plan, right? That is your base level, your static fitness, where you're building everything else from. The longer you can give yourself the runway, the bigger we can make that base and the taller that the pyramid can go from that pace. Remember that it's your forever pace. You can choose to hike or bike or run, whatever prevents the injury from happening, so that you can really build that base. And this type of effort doesn't have to be that specific. Strength and capacity, right? It's just your muscles' ability to weather the demands of climbing Mount Rainier. Think of Rainier being like a bunch of squats in a row, okay? You're moving uphill, you're stepping 1 foot at a time up to the next step, and it just gives your body the ability to last longer while on the mountain. And it's part of a safety thing, right? I mean, the less sloppy you can be on the mountain, the more safe you're going to be, because you're going to make less mistakes, right? But when we're talking about strength training, it is kind of an afterthought, right? We have all of these workouts to build our capacity and build our strength. And strength training is just another stimulus. And so if you're training and you're totally wasted from the training, it's not necessarily a good idea, at least in the beginning, to add that strength on top of all of this training. Okay. And so think of it as a cherry on top. If you can do the strength training, fantastic. It's good. But I don't want you thinking that it's a replacement for the cardiovascular training. And I don't want you thinking that, oh, this is just an afterthought. I can do this on my rest day. Take your rest days seriously. But some exercises that we can do, at least in the very beginning of our training plans, are what's shown in front of you, right? It's just the core exercises, and it's those box step-ups. I think I boiled it down to 6. There's 3 in another slide coming up. But if I were to do 6 only, I think I would do these 3 first in the first part of my training plan to build my core, so that the tree trunk, your core, is strong, steady, and can hold the weight of a pack and be on your feet in a dynamic environment in a changing trail with efficiency. And then that box step up, that is how you climb mountains, right? You are stepping on a box over and over and over again. And so, yeah, those box steps are really, really important. And we talked about muscular endurance, right? It's just your muscles' ability to last for 10, 12, whatever a summit day would be. Okay. Ooh, there were 7. Heck yeah. Don't worry. We're not asking you to do what the guy on the right's doing, right? You don't have to look like that in order to climb Mount Rainier. And that's a good thing, because I don't think I can do that, right? But as we start getting stronger, progressing in our training plan, yeah, we start doing more targeted, specific workouts to Mount Rainier maybe. And that looks like the split leg squat, right? You can think of it, and I think this is easier to grasp for at least myself, as running, right? Running is just balancing on one leg over and over and over again. And so your balance, your ankle balance, your muscle stability, your core is so important when you run because of that. I think the same can be applicable, though not directly, to mountaineering. And you want that one leg or both legs in a single capacity to be super strong. And I really like that split leg squat for that. The Turkish get-ups is just a core muscle workout. Same with the kayaker and same with the leg races, right? These are so important. Our core is so important when we're climbing Mount Rainier. It makes us less sloppy. It makes us more safe. Okay. And I'm going to add one more to this, which is eccentric loading on a box, right? You can think of it as standing on an elevated surface and lowering yourself down onto the ground, right? What that does is it trains your downhill muscles as well as your uphill muscles, right? You're going to be doing the downhill half the time. And so stepping down from the elevated surface is going to help train that muscle, right? If you're doing weighted hikes or you're doing any kind of specific mountain training, if you're coming to Mount Si or Mailbox Peak, you're going to be doing the downhill anyway. I don't see the point in doing too many weighted downhill hikes, right? It's just the juice isn't worth the squeeze. The amount of adaptation that you get from going downhill with a ton of weight on is just not that worth it, because it elevates our risk of injury too much. I think if I was doing weighted hikes or weighted step-ups, I guess weighted hikes, I would carry water in my pack so that I could dump it out at the top. It's frowned upon to leave weights at the top of mountains. And so bring water bottles or gallon water jugs or something like that, so that you can train weight for the uphill, but not so much the downhill. Be careful when you're doing that kind of stuff, please. And then peak and taper. I feel like we covered what that is. It's just the peak of your training plan, and then the rest and recovery that happens right before the actual event when you come to climb Mount Rainier. Recovery. I want to say it again because it's so dang important, right? Your recovery is so important, right? Roll out your muscles if you feel like you need it. Do some yoga to recover. Take your rest days as seriously as you would your workout days, okay? Because that's when you're going to adapt. Right. Along with training muscular strength, training your cardiovascular system, training nutrition and what you eat on the mountain is super important. Training your gut, right? And so I want you on all of these hikes or longer efforts to figure out what you think you might want at altitude, what you're going to eat on the climb itself. And that shouldn't look like a bunch of Cliff Bars, right? Don't kill me, Cliff. It shouldn't look like some engineered, super nutritious bar that you find at REI or anything. There's nothing wrong with those, right? But at altitude, things get less and less appealing, okay? What you like at altitude is kind of this black box. If you haven't been there, you don't really know. And so what I usually tell people is, if you wouldn't eat it sitting down on the couch watching the pit, you shouldn't take it up on Mount Rainier to eat it up at 14,000 feet, because nothing gets more appealing the higher you go, okay? And so make sure that it's something that you want to eat down low. Think Pringles, Cheez-Its, obviously this is for me, Twix, right? All of those things. It doesn't have to be shot blocks and Cliff Bars and all of those things. It doesn't have to be Gorp or Nut Mix. I see so many people bring way too much trail mix on it and then carry up and down a bag of trail mix. All right, so I don't want you to fall into that trap. You can bring some, don't make it your whole kit, and please bring a variety. Try a variety when you're training for all of these peaks, because you just don't know what you're gonna want, and you should be able to look inside your bag and say, okay, that Snickers looks disgusting, but a couple of Pringles, I can get that down. Right? Because we need to keep calories in the system. We need to keep putting fuel into the fire in order to keep feeling good as we keep ascending. Okay. And mental fitness, right? Mental fitness is a tough one, right? It's not necessarily that specifically trainable, right? You either have it or you don't, and you can slowly build your mental fitness, but it doesn't happen overnight. Right. I think I want to couple mental fitness with confidence as well. And there's a great book by Steve Magnus. He's a trainer. He trains some people in the Olympics, and all of this confidence and mental fitness comes from doing hard things. Right. And so if you're sticking to your training plan and going out in the rain and choosing to do the workout when you just don't feel like it, gosh, that makes you mentally tough, right? And it's going to pay dividends as you keep going up the mountain, because you say to yourself, yeah, I've done something like this. I can remember that day when I went out in the rain, when I didn't feel like it, and I still completed my hike, right? And you can call upon that to give yourself some confidence in order to just push through some harder points in the climb itself. And so mental fitness is a big part of it. Some people will tell you that climbing mountains is 80% mental and 20% mental, right? That's not totally true, but you get the point, right? It's a lot in the head as much as it is in the body, right? And I want to dispel a myth, right? So many people call into the office and say, I'm from Florida, like I'm at a disadvantage, right? It's just not true. I mean, a little bit when you're living in Denver, you're more acclimatized to a 5,000 foot peak, right? But it's all about your cardiovascular fitness and your muscular endurance when you're talking about going up to altitude. It gives you very marginal gains to be from Colorado or something like that. And in fact, most people aren't from Colorado, turns out. And so, gosh, don't overthink the altitude thing. It is so about your training plan and how you prepare and your cardiovascular and your muscular endurance, like I had said before. So don't overthink it. You just got to get mentally tough by doing those workouts and follow your training plan. Okay. Right. And so metrics, right? It's not going to come down to one single workout that makes you ready for Mount Rainier, right? But you're thinking to yourself, how do I know I'm ready, right? And the 1,000 feet an hour with a 25-pound pack is something that we keep coming to as a guide service to keep as our metric and keep as our North Star when we're telling people, how do you know when you feel ready? Right? If you can do 1,000 feet an hour with a 25-pound pack and feel like you can go a little bit faster, that puts you in a really good position to climb Mount Rainier, right? Because that's how most of the stretches work. We go about 1,000 feet an hour and we take a break for 15 minutes, right? Then we go another 1,000 feet and we take a break for 15 minutes, right? If you can do that faster than an hour, or you can go 2,000 feet in an hour, that's fantastic. But this should be your baseline test to see, like, yeah, I think I am ready. It should just give you a little more confidence, though it's not going to simulate the actual mountain itself. It's just the best we can do at sea level. Like I had said before about your core and your muscular strength and all of those things, all of your cardiovascular fitness and all of this training just makes you safer on the mountain. And I think it makes it more palatable for your loved ones when you're like, I'm going for a 3-hour hike on the weekend twice, right? To say, yeah, I'm just trying to be a little more safe on the mountain. Use it as a justification because it's true, right? Being fit makes you safer on the mountain because it makes you more adaptable to the changing conditions of the mountain. You can move a little bit faster if you need to. You have a little bit extra in the tank if you need to react to something really quickly. And it's just a safety concern as well as a goal concern, right? The fitter you are, the more likely you are to achieve this specific goal, and it's going to keep you a lot safer. Sometimes our speed on the mountain when we're moving through overhead hazard, like rockfall or icefall, our speed is our safety mitigation tactic. And so we're never running through that section, right? But an ability to run if something were to fall is an important thing. All right. And so there's a bunch of resources out there. And I'm going to preface this by just saying that even if you follow a poorly structured training plan, a perfectly followed, poorly structured training plan is better than a poorly followed, well-structured training plan. And so consistency is key with whoever you're picking, right? If you're picking a training plan and there's a lot of options out there, I want you to just commit to it, right? Follow everything on that training plan because the consistency is going to make you fitter. It's going to make you more confident, and it's going to keep you safer and more likely to achieve those goals, right? And RMI has a bunch of resources on its website that can point you in the right direction to fitness and training resources. And I'm going to plug a few books here as well, which is my favorite, which is Training Essentials for Ultra Running, right? Jason Koop's book right here. It's for ultra running, right? Which sounds a little bit weird, but a lot of the cues that we take are from the ultra running community because they take cues from the Olympic biking community, and it just trickles down into the mountaineering community just because there's more bikers in the world than there are mountaineers. And so that Training Essentials for Ultra Running, what a book, and it's so applicable to mountaineering as well. And so I really want to suggest that one as like the North Star of everything. I think very highly of Jason Koop as a coach and just a training and a mind in this space. And so pick up that book. Right. And if you want something more mountaineering specific, Scott Johnson and Steve House created Training for the Uphill Athlete. I still think the Training Essentials for Ultra Running is a little bit more is better. And then training partners, right? Finding an actual partner is the best thing that you can do. Someone to knock on your door and say, hey, get up, we got to go. Right. But there are other communities as well. Right. There's the RMI Strava Club. And we partner with a few of the coaching platforms. I will say, disclaimer, I own Alpine Training Systems. And so it's specifically made by the guides that will be guiding you on the mountain, these training plans. And so Alpine Training Systems, but I do not want you to steer you away from Evoke Endurance because they are a great platform as well. And Uphill Athlete is pretty good as well. Let's get to your questions.
Back. That was awesome, Dom. Thank you. So we are going to start going through the questions. We're just going to go through them in chronological order. Hannah will continue to flag questions as they come up. If we kind of get to an answer in a previous question, I might skip around a little bit. So please don't get mad at me if your question doesn't get asked. I promise it's because it was already answered a little bit, or it's not as pertinent to the training aspect. Like I said, we've got a lot of great resources on the site about gear, equipment, the qualifications, other programs, all that stuff. And like I said, we're always happy to answer questions as well at RMI. So I'm going to get rid of this presentation here so that you guys can see us a little bit better.
Oh gosh, I'm getting bigger on the screen.
And then I will go to questions, and Yeah, Hannah, if you can just keep flagging those, that would be awesome. So I'm going to go from oldest to newest and just start at the top. So Don, the first one is Rachel from Denver asks, she's signed up to attempt the couch route with RMI this July and is wondering about upper body strength for the route, especially as a woman. What do you suggest focusing on?
Great question, Rachel. I think that's a common anxiety when you're going ice climbing. The couch route isn't so steep that you're going to feel like you need to hold on to your tools as tight as you can, right? It can be kind of ledgy a little bit. So like think of it as super large body length, human length steps. And so I really want you to focus on your quads and your calves. And when your guides train you for how to climb like on ice, I want you to really focus on that technique, okay? Because it shouldn't be this like hard grip on your ice tools as hard as you can, because your fingers are going to get cold, your arms are going to get cold because of it. And so it should be more quads than anything else. And but doing a couple of pull-ups, whether it's with a band around your feet or anything like that, is just going to do you a bunch of good, right? Your traps and your lats and everything like that, train those. It doesn't have to be a full pull-up, right? But training that stuff if you're nervous about your quads.
Awesome.
Good question, though.
Lawrence from Charleston is asking how Rainier compares to Kilimanjaro via the Western Breach route. And I think I'd like to tailor that a little bit to talk about, Rainier compared to other high elevation, but maybe less glaciated climbs and kind of what to train for specifically there.
Yeah. Commonly we'll see Kilimanjaro climbers come to Rainier and think because Kilimanjaro is a little bit higher, that it equates to more difficult. It's not the case. Rainier is more difficult than Kilimanjaro. You're carrying your own pack. It's not as high, but it's glaciated, so there's more technique. Though on Kilimanjaro you're taking 2 steps up and 1 step back, right? It's not always the case on Mount Rainier that is the case, but train harder for Mount Rainier. I think it's a little bit more difficult.
Cool. Emily is asking, I just wanted to say, everyone, great community here. Thanks for supporting, Emily. That was cool to see a lot of support for climbers in the chat. But so yeah, she is saying she's been training for maximal performance, has good aerobic capacity, and on a Bruce treadmill test, has exceptional exercise capacity, but she's not confident about her endurance. She's 69 and is wondering if she's too old or has too many years of maximal training to shift to endurance training.
No. Nope, you're not too old, right, Emily? I hope that's good news for you. Right? You're not too old. I hesitate to say never too old, but 69, you're a young spring chicken still, okay? And so you can definitely switch, and there's tons of resources and coaches out there that can help you make that switch if you've been in this maximal performance mindset, like CrossFit or something like that comes to mind. There's tons of resources and coaches that can help you adjust your training plans and adjust your workout routine to match the needs of Rainier.
Awesome. This one came up a few times, but yeah, how did you define short for your short hikes?
Yeah, and so it varies, right? I don't need you mimicking exactly what Rainier does. I don't need you going out on a 12-hour hike and seeing sayonara on a Saturday and leaving your husband or your wife with the kids for that long. I'm not advocating for that, right? Short hike it depends on the elevation, right? It so depends. A short hike I'm going to label as maybe an hour, right? That sounds like a lot, but as you do lower effort activities, right, you have to increase the amount of time that you're doing those activities. Okay, if that makes sense, right? If I go on a 40-minute run, it does not equate to a 40-minute hike, right? And hopefully that clicks for you. And so I'm defining short as, an hour-ish. And what elevation doesn't quite matter. Depends on the terrain. and what you're doing, right?
Cool. Monica's asking, so that our benchmark of 1,000 feet an hour with a pack that we expect, does that hour include or exclude that break?
So the hour is at the end of that break. It excludes it. Yeah.
Hike an hour, 15-minute break.
Yeah, totally. So
hour.
that whole stretch would be an hour 15. So the first hour would be hiking and 15 minutes on the bookend. Yeah, good question.
All right. Buck is asking for weight and strength training, sport specific, like step ups, etc., or more compound movements. I mean, I know you gave some good exercises there, but yeah.
So he lists squats, deadlifts, lunges, dips, pull-ups. All of those are great, right? But some of them are more specific to Mount Rainier, right? And so squats and lunges are more specific to Mount Rainier. And so I would prioritize those over the other two first, right? Like I had said before in the strength training section, strength is a sprinkle on top that you add when you're feeling like you could do a little bit more on your hard days, or you want to add a little more stimulus to it, right? And so prioritize the things that are more specific to the event that you're training for, and then expand from there to increase the amount of just general strength.
Cool. Tito asks, how would you recommend training to acclimate to higher elevations?
Yeah, so it's all about that cardiovascular strength, right? Your cardiovascular ability and prowess dictate how you do at altitude, full stop, right? There are some other factors that are just at play, whether you got sick right before or sick on the plane, or you have like a little bit of a stomach bug. But outside those abnormalities, what you can do at sea level is just get as cardiovascularly fit as you can.
Perfect. We talked about this a little bit, but is there any kind of downhill training exercise you recommend besides just walking downhill?
No, well, that eccentric step down, right, would be a downhill training exercise. And that stems from just the years that I've spent on the mountains. I've seen a lot of people walking downhill that are stepping downhill and letting their foot land wherever it does. Where I want you to step down as you descend the mountain, it'll make you just feel a lot better, and your knees will thank you as well. Is there any downhill specific training? No, right? Not really. It's just something that you're going to have to deal with. And there's some like stabilizer muscles that you could train on the downhill, but that's just walking downhill without any weight. That's okay.
Cool. All right. Is carrying a backpack with 48 pounds on a Stairmaster for 45 minutes good training?
Depends on the day of your training plan, right? If that sounds like a lot of weight for not that much time. And so it sounds like you're trying to cram your workout into 45 minutes because that's what you have. If that's all you can do, that's better than nothing, right? If you were scheduled for an hour and a half workout and you were supposed to carry like a 40-pound pack that day, and all you can do is 45 minutes, then do it, right? But if you have more time, I would give it more time as well. Though 48 pounds sounds like a lot, right? That's a lot for most people. We're not all like Jason Kelsey.
For the box steps and the step downs, what's the best way to determine the height?
Depends on your height, right? I don't want you feeling like you're overextending yourself to step up or step down, right? For the shorter folks, I think you should do higher step ups every once in a while, but it's not mandatory that you consistently do a certain height. I would say just training your quads and making sure that it's at least at a 90-degree angle from your hip. That's a good metric to at least start at, and you can ebb and flow that based on where you are in your training plan.
Cool. How much time do you suggest to rest between Camp Muir climbs and the actual climb? I'm assuming this is if they're using a Camp Muir hike as training.
Yeah. So Camp near climb. Okay, so if you're using it as a training stimulus, right, I would probably give it maybe like 5 or a week days, right? It depends on how fast you recover. I think a good metric on how fit you are is how fast you can recover. And so I think it's very specific to every individual about how long that should be. And that's up to the individual. If you think you can recover in 5 days and feel like you could do it again in the next 5 days, then that's it. That's the answer. But if you're talking about a independent climb and how long you should wait for climbing the Camp Near and then going for the summit, you can do that within a day for sure.
Cool. Stephanie's asking, how many rest days per week do you recommend?
Yeah, it varies. It varies on a couple things, right? It varies on where you are in your training plan and how much time you got, right? You guys aren't professional athletes, right? None of us are. And so we can't just dedicate our lives to this extreme amount of training and do it. And so if you have 2 days that you cannot, or you're going to skip it that day, there's no sense in fooling yourself and scheduling a workout for that day, because you have a long day and you're going to end up skipping it, and you're going to end up feeling bad about yourself because you skipped it, and you're going to try to cram for the test because of it. And so I'd say I'd shoot for working out at least 4 or 5 days of the week. And if you can do 6, that's great, but it's not realistic for everybody.
Awesome. Glenn asks, on nutrition, is there merit to zone 2 training while fasted to move using fat as a fuel, since constant carb intake is tougher on the hill?
No, don't train fasted. I'm pretty against that, actually. You're going to get yourself injured. It's going to be harder to recover. You're going to recover slower than you would if you were eating on those hikes, right? It's not a good idea to train fasted. It's a good idea to train the way that you would be climbing. And so wait an hour before you eat something, and then wait another hour and eat something, because it's going to be tough to eat on the go when you're holding an ice axe and maybe a fixed line in the other hand or something like that. Do not train fasted though, please. Right? You're going to get yourself injured, and nothing hurts a training plan or your ability to get as fit as you need to be than an injury. I mean, it just impedes everything. So stay uninjured. That's the best medicine. Cool. Don't train fasted.
Can you talk a little bit about training with equipment? This is specifically about using mittens with poles, but I think just, kind of general, what kind of equipment training should people be looking into?
I think if you wanted to take your boots out for a walk, that would be okay, right? Just to get used to them, find out where the blisters form, find out where you get a little bit of a burning sensation on your heels or anything like that. I think that might be worth your while every once in a while. But training with mittens and poles doesn't make that much sense to me. It just is very specific to the upper mountain and isn't applicable for the broad spectrum of the climb. Maybe you'd be doing it for 5% of the total climb, if that. I don't think it's worth specifically training for, though it is nice to use poles and get used to using them. Right? Cool. And so, I don't advocate for training with crampons on your local trail.
Gia asks, I heard someone can be removed from the climb if they're deemed unqualified. Can you go into more details on that?
Removed is a harsh word for what actually goes on when someone turns around, right? And so, like we had said, your fitness and your ability to have a little bit extra in the tank and your ability to not only get to the summit but back down safely is a consideration when we're talking about safety and margins of safety on a climb. Okay. And so while we're on a climb, if you're, or let me back up one sec. Picture yourself on a beach and you see a buoy out in the distance and you want to swim to that buoy and all the way back, right? You have to swim to that buoy and have the energy to come all the way back in order for you to not drown on that swim, right? And so you need to have the energy to get to the summit and back. Or in the scenario that someone gets hurt or there's an emergency, you just don't have the energy to deal with that and be an asset to the team that you're on, right? You never want to be the liability on the team. You always want to be part of the asset group. And so getting removed from the climb is just such a way that I wouldn't put it. But sometimes it gets obvious to the guides and not always the climbers that it just is you're going to be swimming out too far, and it makes more sense to go on back down and climb another day.
Awesome. Preston asks, should we be thinking about training differently if we're doing the Emmons route or any other route versus the DC?
Great question. I think you should maybe carry a little bit of a heavier pack. That 25-pound pack doesn't necessarily apply to the Emmons. You're carrying a little bit heavier of a pack to get up to Camp Sherman, which is the high camp on that climb. And so throw a little bit more in your pack. But that 1,000 feet an hour is still applicable. Maybe shoot for 35.
Cool. Aaron asks, is mountain biking a good way to train?
If you need to cross train like biking or swimming in order to maintain your training plan or maintain a certain level of cardiovascular fitness and not get injured, then I advocate for mountain biking or swimming or any of those things. You want to, obviously, being more specific is a little bit better than mountain biking, but if that's your activity for that day, then that's okay too, right? You're still using those muscles. You're still working out your heart. You're still doing those things, though it's not one for one.
Awesome.
You don't have to give up mountain biking, Aaron.
Joel asks, would you recommend a weighted vest at all or just stick with weighted packs?
I like a weighted pack a little bit better because I just like to learn about the system that I'm going to be using. But if a weighted vest is going to get you out the door and walking around and it just feels more comfortable for you, I think it makes sense. Yeah, right. It sits a lot better because it's equalized on your front and your back. And so I don't see the problem in it, but get used to the stuff that you're going to be using, right? It just gives you a little bit more peace of mind. No crampons on trails though.
Tracy asks, is there a recommended VO2 max level?
No. There's just not. I mean, it's so different for everybody that you shouldn't be obsessing with what your Garmin is telling you is your VO2 max. It's just not that important, honestly. All right, you should train for it, right? There are merits to training that as a stimulus in your training plan, but it's not. You shouldn't give it too much credence and mental space when you're looking at your watch and you're saying, oh my God, I'm only at 50. Yeah.
Cool.
Don't stress over it.
Rachel said she already had a question, but it's okay. We've got time. So she heard us say 1,000 feet per hour, 25 pounds is the standard. Is that different as the weight gets higher, 50 to 60 pounds, as we have been warned about for the Couch route, or does the expectation remain at 1,000 feet per hour, even at 60 pounds?
It still remains at the 1K an hour with 25, and it's closer to the Emmons route. Actually, I would put a little bit more weight in your pack than 25 pounds because it's not the DC. You'll be carrying that pack for just a little bit longer up to the high camp on the Couch route. Right. But after that high camp, you're carrying a day pack, basically. You're carrying the same pack. It just has day pack amount of stuff in it. And so it's not that 60 pounds.
Cool. All right. Amanda said, I went with RMI to Camp Muir last year. I struggled with snow skills. I was working really hard, but not getting anywhere. How can I work on this before my climb? It sounds like maybe that's more towards like the actual approach in the snow and learning how to move on snow well.
Yeah, I think it's worth, if you live near snow, I mean, that's the best solution as well. But watching some videos on how to rest step and all of those things, it sounds like to me, and from what I've seen, the rest step is a hard concept because it's not how we move generally in any other part of our life. And so getting on a Stairmaster, if you can't hit the snow, and really watching a YouTube video on how to do so and kicking those steps if you're in the snow is just going to help you. And then hearing it again, sometimes it just clicks for us. on how to do it. And sometimes it just takes the right coach. And so call RMI and see if you can figure out what you need to, and we can help as much as we can.
Cool. Jen asks, any advice for those of us who struggle with lateral knee pain on the downhill?
Yeah, PT, right? Go to your PT and tell him, right? He or she is going to be able to figure that out better than I can on a webinar. And so I don't have a specific thing. Wear a knee brace. There's nothing wrong with wearing a knee brace on the downhill, but there's definitely exercises that is above my pay grade that your PT is going to be able to address that I specifically won't be able to. And so go see him, tell him. I bet you'd be surprised at how much you can do.
Cool. Andrew says, I live in Michigan and the most accessible thing I would have access to is a stair climber. How would the standards differ for workouts on that? Would you still recommend a baseline of 1,000 feet per hour, or would it be increased a bit since the stair climber is probably a little easier? I think maybe we can just talk more generally about using a stair climber or stairmaster for just in general for training. I think I've seen a couple of questions about kind of the baselines there.
Yeah. So the big difference between a Stairmaster and the trail itself is just the variability of the trail. Your ankle stability, your knee stability, your hip stability, and all those things don't get really tested on a Stairmaster because it's so consistent. And so making sure that you get out on a trail, no matter if it's like uphill or just a walking trail, you should still get out onto an actual trail and just walk around and make sure that you're testing your stabilizer muscles and everything. Is it a bit easier? Yes. But gosh, is it mentally tough to sit on a Stairmaster for an hour plus and work on that. Kudos to you, right? I'm sure you're watching a lot of movies. Go ahead and tell us what your favorite ones are. A lot of podcasts, a lot of movies. It's really making you mentally tough, Andrew. That's good. Stick with it.
Nina asked the question, why not have weights while coming downhill?
I think you can every once in a while, right? I'm not advocating for completely having no weight all the time, but having as much weight as I want you to on the uphill lends itself to more injuries when you're constantly doing it on the downhill as well, right? And so I don't want you doing it all the time. And that's why it just lends itself to more injuries, and injuries lead to lapses in your training plan, and lapses in your training plan leads to an underpreparedness for Mount Rainier. And so don't always walk with weight on the downhill.
Cool. Dale asked, what are your thoughts on an acclimatization hike just before the actual climb versus resting before the actual climb? And I think we kind of already answered that with the Camp Muir question. But
yeah, you're not going to get that much acclimatization by going up beforehand, right? Your body takes an extremely long time to actually acclimatize to the height that you need to go, and staying at Camp Muir for an extra hour or so is if you can recover, then you can do it. But if you're finding yourself having to recover for an extra day or two, don't do it.
Cool. Brendan asked, how should we structure the workouts throughout the week? If we have 2 hours per day to train, what should the split be between cardio and strength?
Focus on cardio, right? And what I like to do is keep my hard days hard. And so you'll typically be asked to do maybe a workout or two. And by workout, I mean hard day, once or twice a week. And I like to put my strength training on those days. Keep your hard days hard and your easy days easy. Don't start letting your strength program go into your rest days, because those are just as important as that hard day. And so if you're structuring workouts throughout the week, if it's a static 2 hours every day, then you can pick whatever day you want those workouts to be. But if you have more time on a Monday and a Wednesday than you do on a Tuesday and a Thursday, because you have a kid's soccer game on a Tuesday or a baseball game on a Friday, structure those longer hard days on days that you actually have the time to do them, so you're less likely to skip them.
Awesome.
Fit your training plan into the realities of your life, right? Because that's how you actually end up doing them.
Yeah. I'm going to go to skip down a few just because this ties into that. But is there a basic training schedule I can download that applies the training logic we've talked about. I can really quickly just answer that we do have a kind of very basic 16-week training plan up on the RMI resources. Hannah, you might want to throw the link in here if you can find it. And that's like super bare bones. It's if you want a spreadsheet template that you can copy and make your own, it might help. If you're looking for something a little more defined, I think that's where I'll let Dom talk about it.
Come on, I gotta plug it, right? You got to go to Alpine Training Systems if you want a little more in-depth training plan. Obviously, there's more resources out there like Evoke and Uphill Athlete, but I'm a little biased to Alpine Training Systems. You can find a good 16-week training plan on there.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think it really comes down to the level of help that you want. You know, if you're pretty comfortable just reading a couple blogs and putting together your own thing, that's great. If you want more resources, there's a lot out there, and Dom's a great one for it. So then next one, Ramsey asked, do you have any particular training to prepare for using crampons?
Wear your mountain boots, right? That's the best you can really do. It's like you're not going to wear your crampons on the local trail unless you have a snow slope near you, a ski slope near you. It's just not that like reasonable to put on your crampons and start walking around. So no, I really don't. It's just more time. You got to get on more climbs with RMI. That's what it is.
Sure. All righty. Let's see. Any advice on training to lessen the painful shoulders from backpack straps?
That's why I really advocate for using your pack when you're actually training. I think sometimes a lot of that weight just sits on the bottom of your pack, and so trying to put the water or whatever weight in a more spread out fashion, if you can do that, if that's reasonable for you, would help with that shoulder pain. But ideally, your pack should be about 80% on your hips, right above your iliac crest on your hip bones, and about 20% on your shoulders. And hopefully that lessens the pain. And there's a lot of straps and things that you can pull in order to tighten it in the right places. But that's why I really advocate for, training with the gear you're going to use, especially that pack. Cool. And yes, Glenn, you get more food if you use Alpine Training Systems. Go, Glenn.
All right. Michael asked, how many sets and reps do you recommend for the step ups and split squats? Also, do you think sled pulls are good training for modality for quads?
It depends on you. I know I keep saying that, and you're going to get sick of me saying it. But gosh, it depends on you and your certain capacity that day, right? If you can start with like 3 sets of 10 with no weight on your body or anything like that, and slowly start building up from there, it's going to set you up pretty well. Don't overtrain it or overdo it. That's what I really want you to avoid. And so start slow, start with what you can do, and slowly start building it up. And hopefully you've given yourself a good runway so that you can do that slow progression and you don't cram.
Cool.
And sorry, sled pulls. If it's not applicable for Rainier, I wouldn't do it for Rainier, and I would even hesitate to really train for it, even for a Denali, right? You can do a tire pull or something like that every once in a while, but your hips are going to hurt that first day, no matter if you drag that tire or not. I guarantee you. Okay, and so don't overthink dragging a tire through the sand if you're training for Denali.
I accidentally marked this one as answered and can't pull it back up, but Monica asked, if you do have easy access to mountains, is it possible to train for Rainier exclusively on the trail with different types of hikes, or is it absolutely necessary to supplement that with exercises in the gym?
I think that goes back to like what to prioritize, right? If you can prioritize the specific mountains or trails that are similar to like a 4,000 foot climb or even 1,000 foot, if you can spend more time on the trails, it's better than exercising in the gym, right? But good strength, good muscular endurance just has you feeling better for longer. And so if you can supplement and you're feeling like you won't get injured by supplementing, then I would suggest adding that on top of those hikes on the trail.
And I think too, those exercises that you pointed out are pretty much all doable from home. So it's not like you need to get a gym membership, but doing some of those core and stability exercises from home is a great way to go too.
Yeah.
All right. Robert asked, on a 5-day climb, will we be leaving any gear at Camp Muir on summit day and then returning for it? Or will we be carrying everything in our packs for the whole climb?
That's the perk. You get to leave it, right? You don't have to carry your sleeping bag to the top. There's just gear that you can leave there. Sleeping bag, extra clothes, extra socks, extra underwear, stuff like that. And you're wearing a lot of the gear that you were carrying as well. And so that pack gets significantly lighter as you go above Camp Muir, which is fine and nice.
Absolutely. Especially if you've been going up to Muir in approach shoes with your boots on your back.
Yeah, exactly.
Aaron asked, what if we are renting all the equipment and don't have access to it when training? Is that a big deal?
No. No, it's not, right? A lot of people rent. Those boots are crazy expensive. It's just not realistic for everybody to try out their boots and like assess what they feel like beforehand. The rental program is a great program so that you don't have to drop even more money for this climb and this opportunity to try and climb Mount Rainier. And so the guides do a great job of working with you as things occur. And that all stems from being honest with your guide and open with your guide and telling them how you're feeling, because we can address problems as they come up. But I can't tell just by looking at you that a blister is forming. And so if you tell me that a blister is forming, I can help and fix it before it actually becomes a problem. But you got to be open and honest with us. And so you do not need to get access to your boots before you come to Mount Rainier, and be honest with your guides so that we can help you out.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Ian asked, how about water? Do we filter or carry all the water we need?
So you'll carry water from A to B, basically. So you'll carry water from the parking lot to Camp Muir, and then from Camp Muir to the summit and back, and then from Camp Muir back down to the parking lot. There's refillable water at Camp Muir and the parking lot, right? Fresh glacier water, old family recipe of mine, right? And at the parking lot, it's a spigot.
Awesome. Well, I think that's about all we have time for. We're right about an hour and 15. Dom, thanks so much. That was super valuable. And thank you all for being here. Hopefully we answered most of your questions. Again, if there's anything we missed, please feel free to reach out to us directly through any of the channels you prefer. We're always available for questions. And yeah, we appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Hey, just one more plug for calling the office and talking to us in person. Myself, Autumn, Lacey, we're all there to answer any of the questions that you have and get you directed in the right place. And so call us and ask or email us at info@rmiguides.com.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Alpine Training Systems.
Do it.